Okay, Jason Momo, Jam on the Fly, and today I'm going to show you my, it's a coyote tail sculpin. Beautiful pattern. Let me show you how this thing evolved. Basically started out with a little lead eye type of deal, and let me just get this, let me zoom in on this so we can get a good look at this. Get that on. I'm going to get you down at my vise so we can see what's going on here that way. Get a little light on the situation. Okay, this little guy here, this is how it all started. Started tying this thing. You want the hook basically for the sculpin to be riding up, so we need a little bit of weight on that, so I did the barbell eyes on this guy. And that was one of the first deals, and fished for several years. It does really well. By the way, I fished the same fly unweighted, and that one I tie the opposite direction. For some reason, this is just a wonderful snook pattern. When this gets wet, it absorbs enough water that it just sinks below the surface and stays on a nice trajectory, and the snook like things up towards the surface. Excellent fly. Another deal was then what happened was I ended up getting rid of the lead head on that sculpin completely, and we got this little Corvette looking fly, beautiful looking fly, where we added a split shot at the bottom so that thing always sits flat. And then from there we took it another step even yet, and we got this guy here where we had articulated the back end, so that thing just flops around freely, and there's a little piece of foam in there to help it float. Again, there's a split shot in here, and let me take this out of the vise so I can show you. Got a little split shot in the bottom right there, if you can see that. So it's weighted, and then as it's weighted, the foam wants to ride up. So of course, as you move this thing, it just undulates and wags in the water. Really looks good in the water. Excellent pattern. So I'm going to show you how to tie that. So we'll do maybe a little bit of both so that you can see what the main pattern is here. Let's go with the straight shank one first. And from here, we're going to use, for the straight shank, we're going to use a SS15. Again, I use these for saltwater as well. So we're going to be tying them on a Gamakatsu SS15 for this particular fly. Going to come back and I'll show you some neat little tricks with this fly. It's actually pretty neat that you could do this stuff. We're going to get some mono on here, Danville fine mono. We're going to tie with, and of course it's called the Yote tail for a reason. This is a coyote skin, and this is a coyote tail. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a coyote tail, and I'm going to take a nice little chunk of that right here, and I'm just going to snip that off tight to the tail. So I end up with a nice little thick chunk like this. We're going to grab the tips of that, and I am just going to simply come through with my brush and comb out all the underfur. Okay, just like that. Just comb out that underfur, and we get rid of a couple of long fibers there. You see them long fibers. Just get rid of that. And this we're going to use for this extra part here, we're going to use for our head. So we'll just set that to the side. And it's basically, if you ever used wool, it's kind of the same head that you get, with the wool. And you get it with the tail as well. So we're going to comb out the long fiber. We're just going to use long fibers here for now. Set the short ones to the side, and of course you could thin that out to whatever amount you want. We're simply getting rid of all the excess, and we're going to lay that on the hook, and I usually use my spring here as a guide for length. I'm going to cut that off. We'll lay this on, and we're going to tie it in just like that. And you can see we just want to get that tied in really nicely. Go to our next thing, which is just a little bit of flash. Whatever type of flash you want to put in. This is kind of like angel hair type of stuff. And I'm going to tie that in about the middle. I don't get too carried away with this stuff. And I'm just going to lay it back over the top so we have a little bit of flash in that fly. It's a Sculpin. It doesn't need a lot of flash. Get rid of the excess. So we have just a little bit of flash up on top, and you can see that really nice. Now we're going to go for a little bit of color. Go for a little bit of color. SF fiber. Use a little bit of olive SF fiber. We like olive Sculpins. We're going to tie that on. A little bit maybe to my side, a little bit right in the back, right, basically right down over the back of the fly, and we'll tie that down. Just like that. And again, if you take your scissors and just kind of drag it through, you'll get a nice shape. We'd like to keep that thing pretty close to the length there of the spring. And you can see where we're at. That looks pretty good. I like that. Everything's looking nice. And then last but not least, because I do have the entire coat, these hairs that stand up on the back of his back. Okay, so these little guys, when the coyote gets fierce or threatened or whatever, these are the hairs that stand up on his back. Okay, nice long stiff fiber hairs, and I just take a few of them guys and I pull out the longest fibers that I could get, and that just makes a nice little silhouette right over the back, and I like to tie that in just like that. Okay, so we could just get that tied in as well, right over the back, and that's pretty much the tail. See how that compresses that down and kind of keeps that all tight? That's what I like about them fibers there. Just kind of holds everything into shape. And we tie that in like that. Okay, so that pretty much gives you. Now, if you're going for the look, or which is the oh, there you go. If we're going for this guy here, now this guy here has no weight, and I use it just as a streamer. Okay, so all we really need to do is put a collar and a head on. Okay, now if we want to go with the weighted one, I'm going to take a size 7 split shot, and you can use 7, you can use up to size 5 actually, depending on the current that you're fishing. If you have heavy current, I like to use this little guy here. I put my split shot on it, and then you could just simply take your scissors and you could pry that open. See that? I could just spread that split shot wide open like that, if you could see that. And then I'm going to lay that split shot right on top like this, and that's actually sitting so it's halfway on the wrap piece. Okay, I want to show you how this gets tied in. And again, pinch this and just hold it in place. We're just going to slowly pinch that together a little bit just to hold it in place. Now we got a little trick. Now the little trick here is keeping that little piece in place. So let's make a loop with our mono, and we're going to wrap to the front. Now we're going to take this same mono just like this, and we're going to come over and tie it in. Okay, and we're going to take the same mono and we're going to come back and we're going to tie it in here on this side. Okay, then move your thread over to the other side, come right over the top, pull that straight down in, and you can see basically what we're doing is we're creating a nice little lock which keeps that split shot in place just like that. So there's several wraps over that split shot of the line. Okay, now we're just going to simply take our Bondic and we're going to put a little dot here in front and a dot in the back, down the sides a little bit just like that, and we'll cure that. Let that cure like that. Beautiful. Just like that. Now, we have everything riding the opposite way. See, this is not the way we want it. We want it the other way. So what we're going to do now is, you see how this turns on the shaft? Pretty neat. Now we're going to take this, we're going to spin that right around so that it's now upside down, which is the way it's going to fish. Take a little pin, pull part of the fibers one way to one side and pull part of the fibers to the other side, and just simply take your time and divide that out. And now you can see we pretty much have this. There we go. Now we have it, pretty much have it the way it's supposed to be. We have the black on top, the green in the middle, and you could even come over and grab some of that extra green, and basically we could do whatever we want as far as situating this. But basically by flipping it, it just gave you an option that you don't have to tie all that down like you normally would. So it's kind of a neat little step, so you can spin that afterwards. Okay, so there you go. That's the basic tie for the body, and of course we just spun that. Now we'd be ready for a collar and a head, which you'd end up with that fly light right there. Okay, so we need a collar and a head. So rather than showing you that step, we're going to go now. I'm going to tie this off. I'll finish it later. And oh, one other thing. Let's turn this upside down. You see that gap right there? You see there's a gap there where we had that? We're going to fill that with Bondic right away too. That we do as well. So basically I just come in here with Bondic, fill that little piece right there, and hit that. Then after that step I would be ready to put the collar and the head on. And that gives you that more, I guess I'm calling it more of a Corvette look streamer. So it's a little bit more streamlined. Again, when that's all said and done, tied up, it rides upside down, but it'll look like that. And of course you'll marker up the back and do those things like that, which we'll get into later. We'll get into with the articulated. So I'm going to tie this off because the head part, when we go to do the other head, is the same thing that you would do to finish this fly. So I will finish this fly later on so that we don't cut into some time. But basically that's the streamer right there. Now we're going to do the articulated. So I got a 20 millimeter shank. And you can see that shank has a little bent end. You can see the end's bent a little bit on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to straighten that just like that. Okay, so that's nice and straight and running the way it should be. I'm going to reach into this eye and I'm going to open this up, and we just simply want to get rid of this. So I'm just going to open that up. We'll come in with our pliers and we'll snip this off right at the bend. You see right there the bend. We're just going to take that and we're just going to snip that right off. Okay, just like that, using a 1/4 inch piece of foam. Okay, this is a 1/4 inch piece of cylinder foam, and we're going to just simply slide this on to the shank. Okay, just like that. Alright, so it reveals a little bit. I'm going to go to a 6/0 thread. It just makes it nicer for this particular step, and I'm going to just pull that back and put a nice little bead on there, little thread wrap on there, and finish this off. That little foam is what's going to help float this tail. Again, take a little snip. Okay, we're going to use our super glue gel. We're going to put a nice little bead right there in the end. And make sure we get that underneath as well. There we go. It's all over there. That's all we want. We want it to be everywhere. And we're going to slowly just spin this back onto our piece. And you can assist yourself with a little bit of a scissors or whatever you really want to use. And I am going to just then take a little cloth, and we are going to put that thing right into position just like that. So we basically just have a nice little foam back tied on there. Okay, so now we're going to start our thread, and I'm going to come around the front of the foam like this, and I'm going to actually tie that down. Okay, and we're going to tie that in like that, and we're going to go right to the front of the shank. And maybe I could get this a little better in position for you. But there you go. Basically tie that in like that. And again, the rest of the steps as far as this part is exactly the same. So you're going to cut your coyote tail, but you have to tie everything in the opposite way so it entrains this whole piece. So basically when you cut your coyote tail, you're going to lay it on top and you're going to roll it the whole way around the shank. So when you're done, it's completely entrained. And then of course you stick with the top and add your flash and your color and the rest of your spiky coyote tail. And when you're all said and done, you're going to end up, and then you'll touch it up with a marker as well. And when you're all said and done, you'll end up with this little guy like right here, which is the same tail that we had just tied on the previous tie. So then we're going to take, one thing that we like to do here then is you're going to take little Sally Hansen's, and we're just going to hit that threads right there, and I do that on all the flies. Just take that and hit that for the tail. Set that to the side to dry. While that's drying, I'll grab another one that I already have finished, and we're going to start with the tying of the articulated. In this case here, for the articulated, we're going to use an SC15 size 1. It's a much shorter shank hook. And we start with our thread, and in this case I'm going to use a 6/0 just because, not for any real particular reason. But we're going to wrap that shank with 6/0 thread so we could grab a hold of itself. And then we're going to go with, and I should have it here somewhere, yes I do, here's a piece right here of, well, let me see if I have another one around. Yep, I got another one around. I'm using 40-pound fluorocarbon. 30 pound to be fine, and that's just so I get a nice hook bend. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to tie it to either side of the shank. So right now I'm tying that, and if I could turn my vise so you can see that, I'm tying it to what would be the camera side of the vise. Okay, right to the back, and I'm just going to work my way front again. Work my way back and make sure we got that covered really nice. We're going to slip on our tail. Remember, this thing rides upside down, okay? So we want the tail, we want that to go in so that the tail portion, so that's upside down. So we can see we got the color in the bottom. We're going to make a nice little loop here, and we're going to wrap and keep that to my side of the hook. And I just simply have the vise turned so you can see this. And again, just working our way front, just like this, keeping it to the side, just like that. And we can reach in there with our scissors, cut that off. You can see our tail is completely free. Nothing's holding that up, and now I'm going to turn this the right way so I can just finish my wraps. And again, we're going to wrap that right to the back. There will be a point there where everything's the way it should be. And remember, this thing, when it's done, we'll be fishing this way. Okay, so we have our color up. Okay. Next, we're going to come in and we're going to get our shot on. Our shot is what decides exactly, you know, for this thing to, is what makes this thing right upside down. Again, I'm going to go with another number 7 split shot. I'm going to do the same thing. Put it on my little clip. Jam it on the little clip. Push down. Let that hold it in place. And then I can reach underneath with the scissors and just spread that. And I want to spread it as far as you could, because we'll be closing it up. And don't drop your shot. I caught it just in time. And that goes right to the back, right at that pinch point, but just a little bit front so we can get a few wraps behind, okay? And we're going to center that on there like that. Again, when you see this, most of the weight of this lead, and I pinched it on there, most of the weight of this is on this side, so which means when you drop it in the water, it's going to ride upside down just like that, okay, which is exactly what we want, okay. So same thing as what we had done before. We're going to throw a loop in. Okay, I'm going to get to the other side here, and I'm going to come over and tie and come to this side, and I'm going to come over and tie, and you can just see the loops wrapping that in place. Okay, so again, the same thing, back and forth until you get everything tied down and you feel good and confident about it. And then after that, we'll Bondix the thing in, and it's not going anywhere. So I feel pretty comfortable with that. I got several wraps on top. You can see that threads, it's holding that down, and that combined with our Bondic is going to hold this thing in position very nicely. Okay, going to work this up to the front. We're going to come in with the Bondic. Very careful with this that we don't fill that loop. We just want to get it fast to the shaft. So just a little bit in the backside like that. And I work with just the backside here because I want to heat that. I want to cure that before it entrains on my connection. Okay. Now we could come and hit the front portion, and again just come straight onto the piece and let it run down them threads just like that. Okay, and you can actually come through with your line and thin that out a bit. Okay, just like that. Nice cure job, and you can see that we're into the threads. We got everything locked in. That sucker's not going anywhere at all. We're going to flip it upside down. We have a huge crevice in there. You can see that. You have a huge crevice, a huge void inside there. That gets completely filled up with Bondic. So we're going to just put the Bondic in there. We're just going to fill that whole gap up like that and hit it with the light. And that, of course, adheres it as well. Beautiful, beautiful fly when it's all said and done. Now we need to create our collar. Now you're at the step where you would be with everything else, all the other flies that I tied, you end up with this, okay? So whether you're tying the straight shank or whether you're tying this, it doesn't matter. You end up in this position no matter where you're at. So if I could just come back 1 second and show you the piece that I had just finished. I don't even know where I set it. I just got done tying that. Isn't that the way it goes? My goodness. Anyway, if I find it, I'll show it to you. But anyway, the other one, you have the same thing. You have the shank. You have everything ready to go. Here it is. See, that's the exact same thing. We're to the same point on this straight shank as we are on the articulated, okay? So, our next step. Again, we're going to keep this thing upside down like that. I like a lot of times what I'll do is I will take, on my articulations, take a rubber band, run it down through and out around your vise, and oh, there's no hook on this one. That's right, that doesn't work that way. This one doesn't have a hook. If it has a hook in the end, that's a real good way. If not, just simply get a nice little groove inside that spring and get some of them hairs up in there. That'll hold that away for you really nice. Okay, next step. A little bit of red squirrel tail. We're going to add a little bit of that in. That's going to create the bulk of our collar. So I'm going to take a little piece of this, and basically I'm just holding out the fibers like this, and I'm just cutting them off tight against the tail so that I end up with a nice strand or batch of fibers. And this thing will be riding the way I have it here, so we're going to just stick that in there, and we're going to stick it back to where them points are pretty much in line with our start of our tail or a little past. 1, 2, 3 loose wraps, tighten it up. 4, again, we're sorting through, we're spinning this around. We're making sure it's entrained the whole shank of the hook, just like that, and that it covers the entire thing, and we're just going to wrap that in. So now, if you look, the only thing that we should have bare or almost bare is the bottom. Okay, so the only thing that should be open is the bottom. If you see that, you can see that BB in there, and that's what we want. We want to be able to see that BB. You could snip a couple hairs off to make sure that you could see that. And again, we're going to trim out the rest of this. We could have cut it before. Sometimes I cut it before, sometimes I cut it after. In this case, we're going to cut it after. It's not that biggest deal in the world. But we're going to trim that so that no hairs come past the eye of the hook. Just like that. And now we could slowly wrap forward and get this entire thing wrapped in and tied in. Going to come right to the front with it, and then come right to the back where the bead, where it would splay out the most. Okay, so there you go. There's your collar. Everything's looking really good with this fly. Any adjustments that you need to make, you can make it right now. I just want to get that a little straighter here, so you put that in, oh, like that, let's say. Try and keep that shank running a little bit more straight for me. And again, we're all tied in, everything's looking good, kind of liking that. Beautiful color. You can see how wide flange that collar is and what that looks like, and I'm liking it. And you can see the lead at the bottom, which is perfectly fine. That thing will ride with that lead going down. Next step, we're going to take a couple of these wood duck feathers. And this is really the flank feather. This is dyed mallard. And we're going to lay that in along the side. And I'll do this side first so you can see basically in line with the tip. And just tighten it in just like that. So we're creating a wood duck collar over top of the squirrel tail collar. And again, just picking out fibers like this, feathers like this, pinching them together. And again, you could have one to one side, one to the other side. It really doesn't matter, whatever you like. And again, we're just going to tie that in. So when it's all said and done, you have a nice wood duck collar the whole way around, and it just looks nice and clean and beautiful, and that's it. Now the closer we tie that to the bead, the more we get that to expand. These are our pecks, so we want them to be spread nice and wide, because if you know, the pectoral fins on a sculpin stand out very wide, and the more you wrap in this way, the more they flare out. And that's what we want. Now I'm going to come right over top of all this batch and just secure it all to the shank. Now we're going to, now you can see what we have there. We have a beautiful collar the whole way around, nice wide collar, and now we're going to go ahead and finish our head. You remember this stuff here that we had set to the side, which was the batch that we combed out? And basically all we're doing is just like you would with wool, we're going to do the same thing, but we got it with the coyote tail. And there's something about this stuff that's just unbelievable. We're going to put a little batch on that side. Okay? Going to put a little batch on my side. I'm going to put a little batch right up on top. And we'll flip it and we'll put a little batch below. Okay? A little batch on the underneath. Now we're just going to pull this all back. Get another thread wrap in there, just like that. We could tie that back and do whatever we would like to do. And we're going to do it again. We're going to do another whole batch. So we take another nice batch and put it to, again, my side. Okay. I like to take care of these sides. This side profile is the most important. Okay, so I kind of pick out the nicest, longest fibers for the sides. Okay, so that side, the camera side. And again, I'm still looking for that eye every time. The top. And flip it upside down, and we'll put a little piece in the bottom here yet. Just like that. Okay? Now we're going to look in here, and if we look in really good, we can find our eye. It's in there somewhere. There it is. You see it? And we could just find that. Mush everything back. And get a nice wrap on that. If you can see what I'm doing here, I have the eye right there exposed so that I can finish off this fly right behind the head. Again, and that kind of slid off of the hook. There we go. Okay, so there's the eye, and we're going to come in and whip finish that out. You could easily push that back with anything you want if you have crowding issues. If you have crowding issues, which I don't, but I'm going to just show you what you could do here. There's the piece. You could just push that back, push this side, then this side, or whatever you want to do to give yourself a little bit more space and cram that together. So here we go with another whip finish. I like to do 2 whip finishes on the head. No problem coming right around there like that. Okay? And finish that guy off. And now we are ready to give this guy a trim. So, let me take it off the vise, out of the vise. I'm going to grab it by the back or by the tail, and I'm basically just going to comb all these fibers forward. And as I comb them forward, you can see all the loose stuff just adding onto the brush, which is a good thing. It just gets rid of all the stuff that you don't want to have to deal with when we come back through and trim this. Okay? Now you got a nice little fuzz ball, and you can actually see where your collar is. So we're going to come in with the scissors, and again, first thing, if we can reach in here and we can open things up enough that we can find our eye, and that is right there. I'm going to come just above the eye, and we're going to snip back just like you would to clear the hook. So we're going to clear that hook just like that. Okay, and we're going to come straight back and get a nice flat area without cutting any of our pieces. So we come right back in underneath the collar and cut this out. If you can see, I'm just kind of trimming this out so that I'm not interfering with the collar at all, and I get that nice and flat, just like that. So you can see that's flat underneath. It reveals our hook gap. It gives us pretty much everything that we need for the fly. I now am going to stand this up, and it's just tough to show you exactly what I'm doing here. But if I find my eye, I come into my eye, and I'm going to take a cut this way, and I'm going to take a cut this way, and I'll show you that as soon as I get done with this cut. Okay, there, you can see the top. I cut. See the eye? I cut it this way and this way, okay? Now we could just come back around, and we're just going to shape this head one way and the other way. Now from the bottom, you can see we're starting to get a nice sculpin shape, okay? And now it's just a matter of slowly tuning that shape and working it as we go. Now we're going to come to the bottom, okay? And we're just going to cut that away. And again, if you have a collar there, you work to the collar. Okay, just like that. And we're going to come right down along. we're doing really good here. And I apologize for not having this thing into focus the whole time, but